Things like economic inequality, crippling taxes, corruption, the misuse of public money. These aren't just modern headlines, are they? They're problems societies have been wrestling with for centuries. Today, we're going to dive into a pretty powerful framework for a just economy, written by an 18th century Islamic scholar. So what if I told you that a potential key to solving some of our most difficult economic problems was actually detailed almost 2.5 centuries ago? Well, we're talking about the great Islamic scholar Imam Shah Waliullah Dehlawi. He looked at these exact problems and laid out a framework for a just economy, one that's rooted in the teachings of the Quran and Sunnah. It's an incredible perspective on wealth, how it should be shared, and what ethical government really looks like. Now, check out this timeline, because this is what's really interesting. Shah Waliullah passed away a full 14 years before Adam Smith published his famous The Wealth of Nations. This just goes to show that a really robust economic vision was already being developed in the Islamic world way before what many people think of as the start of modern Western economics. So what was this vision all about? At the heart of his whole theory was a complete system, and it was built on these 4 pillars: how we produce wealth, how we distribute it, how we exchange it, and finally, how we consume it. You see, together they form a complete cycle that's designed to keep a society fair and sustainable. But before you can build a healthy system, you first have to figure out what's making it sick. And Shah Waliullah identified 2 main diseases that he believed would, without a doubt, lead to the ruin of any nation. Okay, so before we get to that first disease, we need to understand this concept: the Bayt-ul-Mal, or the public treasury. This was the nation's wealth. It was supposed to be for the public good, for running the state. It was absolutely not meant to be treated like someone's personal piggy bank. And that brings us right to the first disease, the looting of that treasury. Shah Waliullah had some really sharp criticism for what he saw as a parasitic class. The elites, the pseudo-scholars, even military leaders, who basically felt entitled to the nation's wealth without ever contributing to it. He said they had turned this looting into their profession. And he didn't mince words. His diagnosis was blunt, and it's captured perfectly in this statement. He argued that these groups weren't assets at all. They were a burden on this society, just draining the resources that were supposed to sustain the whole nation. Now, the second disease is the logical next step from the first. When the treasury is being emptied out by people who don't produce anything, where does the state turn to get more money? Well, it turns to the productive class, the farmers, the traders, the laborers, the people who actually create the nation's wealth. So this diagnosis leads to a central conflict that really defines any failing economy. It's this constant struggle between the people who create value and the people who just take it. So the conflict is between 2 very different groups. You've got the productive class, the farmers, the traders, the skilled workers. They're the engine of the whole economy. And then you have the parasitic class. These are the elites who, using all sorts of excuses, feel entitled to the public treasury, draining the national wealth while producing nothing of real value themselves. And the effect on the productive class, it's just devastating. Shah Waliullah used this really chilling analogy to describe what happens to them. He wrote that if they submit to these oppressive taxes, they're forced to live a degraded life like oxen and donkeys, fed just enough to keep on working for their masters. It's a system that basically dehumanizes the very people who are creating the nation's wealth. And here's the key point. This oppression doesn't just crush people. It actually ends up killing the national revenue itself. Okay, so what's the cure for a system that's so deeply broken? Look, little reforms around the edges aren't going to cut it. Shah Waliullah proposed a solution that was as radical as it was necessary. The cure is captured in this one powerful Arabic term. Nizam. What does it mean? It means the complete dismantling of every obsolete and oppressive system. Shah Waliullah's argument was that if a social or economic contract is just creating oppression, it has to be broken completely. It's like a failed business partnership. When it's not working and causing harm, you dissolve it and you start over. He argued that when a social contract or an economic system becomes a tool of oppression instead of welfare, it's not just a social necessity to break it, it's a religious one. Just like a failed marriage can end, a failed system has to be replaced. So what takes the place of that broken system? 3 simple but powerful principles. First, impose light taxes. Make them minimal and easy to pay so that producers can actually thrive. Second, establish a lean administration. You have to cut the bloat.
that wasteful army of unnecessary ministers and advisors. And third, and this is the big one, you must protect the producers. A government's main job should be to support the real sources of wealth: agriculture, trade, and skilled labor.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. This was all written back in the 18th century. But what's truly remarkable is how relevant this critique feels today. Let's connect this historic wisdom to the challenges we're all facing right now. I mean, the parallels to our modern world are just striking, aren't they? The misuse of public funds, these endless debt-driven economies, massive wealth inequality, and the overtaxation of productive people and small businesses. Shah Waliullah even critiqued an education system that favored foreign ideas over local wisdom. These are the very diseases he was diagnosing almost 250 years ago. Shah Waliullah's warnings feel remarkably, maybe even uncomfortably, relevant today. The truth is that this is a system of oppression due to which our entire society is currently suffering in agony. That's a powerful statement connecting this historical analysis directly to where we are right now. Because of these continuous debt-based economies, every child is born in debt. This is the direct result of the kind of system Shah Waliullah was warning us against, a system that burdens future generations before they've even had a chance to live. So, what's the path forward? His work is a powerful reminder that economics isn't just about charity or complicated financial models. At its very core, it's a science of justice. A just economy, according to this vision, is built on these foundational principles: balance and moderation, not extravagance; justice and fairness for everyone; a real focus on productivity and hard work; and holding it all together, ethical governance and a lean, efficient administration that actually serves the people, not itself. This overview is inspired by the section on Imam Shah Waliullah's economic theory from the book Maqalaat-e-Maeeshat, Article 6, Shah Waliullah Dehlawi's Economic Theory, page 314 to 320, by Mufti Abdul Khaliq, Azad, Raipuri.